Daughter-in-law demands an apology because I wasn't thrilled enough about her pregnancy announcement. Family dynamics are always complicated, but this situation with my son's wife Emma has left me quite questioning everything. At a recent family dinner, Emma announced she was pregnant while everyone else reacted with joy. I couldn't muster the enthusiasm she expected. Later she confronted me, demanding an apology for what she saw as disrespect. When I refused, things escalated, and now my son Daniel is furious with me, claiming I've disrespected his wife and broken the family apart. Here's the full story. Last weekend we gathered for a family dinner at my home, just a small gathering of close family members. My son Daniel, 30 male, and his wife Emma, 29, female, were hosting the evening and seemed unusually excited throughout the night. There were whispers and knowing glances between the two of them, so I knew something was coming. Emma is the kind of person who thrives on being the center of attention, and I suspected she was building up to some kind of big announcement. After dessert, Emma stood up practically glowing and declared, "We have some exciting news. Daniel and I are having a baby." The room erupted in cheers. My husband clapped. My daughter hugged her brother, and Emma soaked up the congratulations like it was her life. But I couldn't react the same way. I managed a polite, "That's wonderful news." But it felt hollow even as I said it to you. See, there's a lot more to this pregnancy than anyone else in that room knew. A lot that Daniel had confided in me weeks. A month before the dinner, Daniel came to me looking utterly defeated. He told me he had something heavy to share but begged me not to judge him. Then he dropped the bombshell: Emma had cheated on him several months ago. I was stunned. Daniel is one of the kindest, most loyal people I know. He's always adored Emma, treating her like a queen. The idea that she would betray him was incomprehensible. But what shocked me even more was what came next. Emma was pregnant, and the baby wasn't his. He explained that Emma's infidelity happened with his best friend Mark, a man who's been part of our family's life for years. Daniel found out about the affair when Emma tearfully confessed to him, claiming it was a one-time mistake that happened because she was vulnerable and struggling with Daniel's infertility. Yes, Daniel had been diagnosed as infertile 2 years ago, something that had been devastating to him, but instead of being supportive, Emma apparently found solace in Mark. Despite the betrayal, Daniel told me he had forgiven Emma, said he couldn't bear the thought of losing her, and since he couldn't have biological children of his own, he was willing to raise this baby as his own. He begged me not to tell anyone else, saying it was his choice and that he loved him too much to let her go, and he felt guilty for not being able to give her a child and make her a mother. I want to make one thing clear: I love my son, and I respect his right to make his own decisions, but this situation is incredibly difficult for me to accept. Emma didn't just betray Daniel, she betrayed our entire family. And Mark's involvement made it even more painful. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was a calculated betrayal by two people who should have loved and respected my son, and while Daniel may have chosen to forgive, Emma's behavior since then has made it nearly impossible for me to feel the same. According to Daniel, she's deflected responsibility for her actions, blaming her infidelity on his infertility and claiming she only sought comfort from Mark because she was grieving the idea of never having children. I've seen no sign of genuine remorse from her, only a smug sense of entitlement, as if Daniel's forgiveness erases what she did when Emma announced her pregnancy at dinner. All these thoughts were swirling in my head. I couldn't pretend to be overjoyed when I knew the baby wasn't Daniel's, and when I was still grappling with her betrayal, I congratulated her politely. But I couldn't fake the kind of enthusiastic reaction she wanted. Emma noticed immediately. She's always been good at reading a room, and it didn't take long for her to zero in on me. I saw her shooting me dirty looks throughout the rest of the evening, but I hoped she would let it slide. Of course she didn't. After dinner, Emma cornered me in the kitchen. She had a tense smile on her face, and she said, "I couldn't help but notice that you didn't seem very happy about the news tonight. This is a big moment for us, and it felt like you wasn't excited." I took a deep breath. Trying to keep my cool, "Emma," I said, "I'm happy for Daniel because I know how much he wants to be a father, but this situation is complicated for me." Her smile vanished. "Complicated? What's so complicated about us having a baby?" Her tone and attitude pushed me over the edge. I replied to Emma, "It's complicated because I know this baby isn't Daniel's. I'm trying to be supportive for his sake. But it's hard to celebrate a pregnancy that came from betrayal, especially when you've shown no real accountability for what you've done." Her face turned red and she started crying, accusing me of her and ruining her moment. I made a mistake, but Daniel is forgiven. He can move on. Why can't you at least? I'm giving him a chance to have the family he always wanted. You should be grateful for that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Grateful?" I said to you. Cheated on my son with his best friend, and now you're acting like you've done him a favor by having this baby. The only person who deserves an apology here is Daniel, not you. When Emma told Daniel what had happened, he was livid. He accused me of disrespecting his wife and making her feel unwelcome. "She made a mistake," he said, "but we've moved past it. Why can't you? You're making things harder for me by holding on to this." I told him I wasn't trying to make things harder for him, but I couldn't ignore the way Emma was twisting the situation to make herself the victim. "Daniel, I love you and I want to support you," I said. "But Emma's behavior is manipulative. She's blaming you for her choices and demanding gratitude for a situation she created that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to ask me to pretend it is." But Daniel wouldn't hear it. He told me I needed to apologize to him if I wanted to remain part of their lives. Since that night, Daniel and Emma have stopped speaking to me. I feel torn. I don't want to lose my relationship with my son, but I also can't bring myself to celebrate a situation that has caused so much pain. At the heart of this, I feel heartbroken. For my son, he deserves so much better than this, but he's chosen to stay with Emma and I have to respect that. Still, I can't ignore the fact that Emma hasn't shown true remorse and continues to blame Daniel for her actions. I'm stuck between wanting to support my son and staying true to my own values. So, am I the a-hole for not being thrilled with my daughter-in-law's pregnancy announcement and refusing to apologize to her? Emma sounds manipulative and self-centered. She's trying to rewrite the narrative and make herself look like a hero for having this baby even though the situation arose from betrayal. The fact that she's blaming OP's son for her infidelity is disgusting. OP's reaction was measured and honest. There's no way OP could genuinely celebrate this. Without compromising her own integrity, OP's son might not see it now, but OP is looking out for him in ways he can't see while he's stuck in this toxic dynamic. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Info: Has Emma ever genuinely apologized to your son for what she did? From your description, it seems like she's deflecting blame and acting entitled, which makes her demand for an apology even more absurd. If Daniel has forgiven her, that's his choice, but he can't force you to celebrate something that came out of such a painful betrayal. You're not the a-hole for standing your ground, but it might be worth having a deeper conversation with your son about why this situation is so difficult for you. Are not the a-hole. Your son is in a tough spot emotionally, and I understand why he's trying to hold everything together, but Emma has crossed so many lines asking you to apologize because you weren't excited enough about this pregnancy when she caused so much hurt is beyond ridiculous. You're allowed to have boundaries and to process this situation in your own way. It sounds like Emma is trying to manipulate everyone into making her feel better about her actions instead of owning up to them. I feel for you, OP. You're being put in an impossible situation where you're expected to smile and nod while Emma spins her betrayal into something noble. Not the a-hole at all. Your son is blinded by his desperation to have a family, and unfortunately, it's making him accept things he shouldn't. He's angry at you because you're the only one who's not going along with him as narrative. Stand firm. He might not understand now, but one day he'll realize you were trying to protect him, not hurt him. Update: After weeks of tension, my son Daniel confronted me with an ultimatum. Apologize to Emma or risk losing him entirely. He told me he couldn't have a relationship with someone who couldn't respect his wife, and he felt I was making their lives harder by holding on to my feelings about the situation. Hearing him say that broke my heart. I've always loved my son deeply, and the thought of him cutting me out of his life was unbearable. I tried one last time to explain my perspective, that my issue wasn't with the baby but with how Emma handled everything, and her lack of accountability, but Daniel wouldn't budge. I realized I had to swallow my pride. Losing my son wasn't worth standing firm from this, so I called Emma and apologized. I told her I was sorry for making her feel unwelcome and promised to try harder to be supportive moving forward. She accepted my apology, though I could sense a smugness in her tone that made it hard to stomach. It wasn't easy, and it doesn't feel entirely fair, but I chose to be the bigger person for the sake of keeping my son in my life. I hope over time this decision will allow me to maintain a relationship with Daniel and his future family, even if it feels like a bitter pill to swallow. Right now I, 28 male, recently got engaged to my fiancée Ashley. My sister Bianca, 30, was also proposed to a month ago. She is planning her wedding for next June. Mine will likely be in July. Bianca always envisioned a big wedding, but our parents can't afford to contribute much. She and her fiancé are both teachers who make decent money but not a ton, especially given their student loans. Meanwhile, Ashley's family has been very fortunate. Her parents founded a company years ago. That makes them a lot of money. I don't know how much they have, but they are definitely multimillionaires while semi-retired. They're very excited for us and are being incredibly generous. They pretty much are giving us a blank check for whatever wedding we want. Bianca will likely need to keep hers to around 40 to 50 people, our extended families, plus her fiancés and some very close friends, mostly just wedding party. No kids, plus ones will be scarce. Ours will be much bigger. We're thinking around 150 people all in with children welcome and plus ones for every who wants one. Bianca says I'm being an a-hole by getting married so soon after her and having a much more extravagant wedding, and is saying I'm rubbing it in and trying to one-up her. She thinks some relatives from out of town will just skip hers and go to mine since it will be bigger. She also implied I should contribute some money to her since I make a lot more than her and don't have to pay for my wedding at all. I feel bad. They aren't in as good of a spot as us. But I'm not going to deny generosity just because she's not so lucky. I also thought her suggestion that I contribute to her wedding fund to be ridiculous, but I wanted some neutral opinions to see if I'm in the wrong, not the a-hole. Your sister's being ridiculous if your parents gave more money to one of you. Yeah, she would be rightfully mad, but this is your fiancé's parents' money. She has no right to tell you how to do your wedding and then have the balls to ask you for money. Some people would already consider 50 guests a lot of people, and she should be happy she can afford that. Sometimes other people can afford more expensive things than you. That's life, not the a-hole. Intimate weddings can be just as lovely as big celebrations. You both got engaged around the same time and are getting married around the same time. No one is going to negatively compare the two weddings of the few who will even attend both of them. I understand she is jealous, but she should try not to guilt trip you into giving her money for her wedding. Couples have the wedding they want and can afford. Yours takes nothing away from hers, not the a-hole. Her parents are providing her with what they can afford. How is your sister going to handle the desperate income levels for the rest of your lives? The reality is that your family will be able to afford a much higher standard of living, which means that your children will get stuff that your nieces and nephews won't get. This might include private school, lots of lessons, vacations to fun places, and parties. My 35-year-old male son is 6 and has always been a picky eater. He's been especially hard since we're on food stamps and half our food comes from the food pantry. For the last 2 months my sister-in-law has been looking after him 3 afternoons a week, and I'm so grateful, especially with how things are getting so expensive now, so saving a bit on childcare means so much to me, and she feeds him, which helps too. The thing is, sister-in-law is very well off and cooks quite extravagantly. We can't even afford the brand name mac and cheese, but at Aunt Gigi's they'll have homemade mac and cheese with a 4-cheese mix. When I serve him the box stuff, he wants pecorino sprinkled on top. I've never even tasted like Pano. My son used to love hot dogs, but now he's used real sausages. Tuna sandwiches were a go-to, but now he wants fresh fish. It's like this every meal where I have to explain to him that we can't afford better food, and he barely eats now. I can't get more than a few spoonfuls in him. When I drop him off, he runs to the kitchen where sisters-in-law prepared a snack tray if I'm early when picking him up. I see he's chowing down on dinner, and I see him often the plate, so I know he's hungry. The other day he was talking about the broccoli soup they had. I thought that might be something I could make, so I asked sister-in-law for the recipe and made it for him. He ate 3 bowls for lunch and polished off the rest for dinner, and parents would be happy seeing their kid eat a whole head of broccoli, but that cost me $12 worth of ingredients, a quarter of our weekly budget on soup. I've never cried so hard in my life. I can't even afford to make soup for my son. The other day we were at my mom's brother's sister-in-law's mom, and I told my sister-in-law that I'm grateful but asked if she could cook less extravagantly. I suggested pasta with just a jar of sauce. She said she didn't want to cook separately for my son, that they'd have to eat this too. I was taken aback a bit and asked her what she meant by "we'd have to eat this." To her exact words, it felt like she was saying they're too good for pasta with sauce, and that's basically her answer. That she didn't want to eat that. I tried to explain my situation, how it's so much harder getting my son to eat now, but my mom cut me off, and we started talking about something else. Later my mom told me I should apologize to my sister-in-law, that I was being an ungrateful a-hole to her, but I don't think I am grateful. But she's made it so much harder for me to feed my son. So am I really in the wrong here? I want to have the conversation again with sister-in-law, but my mom's words are making me feel like an a-hole. On the other hand, I'm really struggling to get my son to eat at it because people are asking. My brother and sister-in-law both work. Sister-in-law works from home on days she looks after my son and has no kids. It's just me and my son. My wife walked out on us soon after he was born. Soft. Yes, the a-hole. Your son has a chance to get to try different food that you can't. You should be glad he can get it. That it's harder for you after because he wants to eat fancy stuff, but he is 6. He should be able to understand that he can't always get what he wants. Time to do some parenting. No a-holes. I do. You think you are in the wrong here, but you are far from an a-hole. You are a struggling parent and you're trying your best. Look. Your sister-in-law isn't an a-hole in any way. She is looking after your child for free and doing a very good job at it to help you out. She is feeding him lovely homemade meals that your son enjoys, a lot of healthy meals too. According to what you described again, I don't think you are an ungrateful a-hole for not appreciating this. Not in context. If you weren't struggling to bring food to your table, then yes, you would be an a-hole. You are putting the focus where it doesn't go, though I understand you cannot afford the kind of food she buys and cooks, but the truth is that food is 1,000 times better for your child. It's not about the taste, but the nutritional value of homemade mac and cheese is worlds apart from instant or packed mac and cheese. Sausages are 1,000 times better than hot dogs, though having sausages every day isn't that healthy in the long run, of course. You should be glad that your son gets access to such rich, nutritious food, even if it's only 3 times a week, and that he likes it also. Your son doesn't sound like a picky eater to me. A picky eater that likes fresh fish, broccoli soup and peony? Definitely not. It just sounds like he prefers the taste of the real thing. That's not being picky, that is just having taste buds. You're not an a-hole because you are too focused on the fact your son isn't eating much at home. And you want to fix that, but I'm afraid that expecting him to substitute on a lesser diet isn't the way. It's not your fault. But it isn't the way, and expecting your sister-in-law to either cook separately for him or settle for a lesser diet for herself and her family is kind of a-hole territory. It's not that she's too good for pasta and sauce, it's that she can afford to eat differently and wants to do that and share that with your son out of sheer kindness. I think what you can do is ask her for cooking tips that you can implement it at home without spending much. Maybe ask what spices or fixes she uses for her dishes, and if there is a way to incorporate those into what you make, ask if there are maybe richer and more filling dishes for your son enjoy so that he can be done after 1 serving instead of 3. And you can freeze the rest and just brainstorm ideas. I sincerely hope your financial situation improves and that your entire family can enjoy lovely meals together. So to set the scene, I was with my ex for 10 years. Helped raise his 2 children, and we had a son together for the 10 years. I had a great relationship with my mother-in-law. When our son was 2 years old, my husband left me for another woman. From that day my mother-in-law completely cut contact with me. I was devastated. Although I had primary custody of my son, his dad and I always were amicable. My son only had regular contact with his grandmother whilst at his dad's. I tried to Reach out many times to my mother-in-law but no response. For 7 years she never contacted my son on his birthday unless he was at his dad's for 10 years. Whilst with my ex I heard her preach about the importance of maintaining a relationship with my stepkid's mom for the sake of the kids, even though she was a D-addict awful woman, yet I was hardworking and provided a stable, loving home for my family these days. My ex and I have a great relationship along with his partner, the other woman. We co-parent amazingly, which works wonderfully for all of us, including our son. I got a call from my ex-mother-in-law wanting to see my son. For Christmas I was surprised yet happy. She was making an effort. I invited her to lunch, and all went well. She made slight digs at my ex, but I brushed it off. Little did I know at the time my ex had stopped speaking to her due to her behavior towards him and his partner. I saw her with my son a few more times. She would speak badly of his dad and his partner and drop the "he should have stayed with your" card. Then she had the audacity to tell me he and his part mistreat my son. I didn't believe this. He is the most amazing dad, and she is the best stepmom. I realized my mother-in-law was trying to draw me into the same narcissistic, manipulative behavior she had with my ex. I have a strong family. Values and grandparent relationships are so important. The next time we spoke, she disrespected my ex and his partner for being aggressive, selfish parents, and I need to get back together with her son to sort him out. I called her out. I would not talk to her disrespectful remarks, and that we have a great co-parenting relationship that will never change. Our son comes first. Then she dropped the clincher that I am just as bad. I am selfish for keeping her grandson away from her and not making an effort to get back together with her son. I hurt my stepkids for the 10 years we were together, a complete lie, and of course never came up over the previous 17 years, and that I was an awful parent who cared more about myself and my work than my family. What the? I told her to duck off, lose my number and never contact me again, as I will never allow my son to be exposed to such toxicity and manipulation. I am proud for standing up for myself but have a pang of guilt at the same time. Am I the a-hole for possibly ruining a grandparent-grandson relationship? Not the a-hole. There was hardly a relationship in the first place. And I honestly think that if you let her be around your son that she would probably try to manipulate him into thinking his father and stepmother are aggressive toward him, or that you are aggressive toward him, and try to get him away from you. From the way you said yourself that she tried to make you think that your ex-husband and his wife were bad people and then blew up when you didn't agree with her. I would definitely go low contact or no contact with her and not let her be alone or unsupervised around your son in case she gets even crazier and tries to do. What relationship do you have? Really want your son to hear how his grandparents are a-holes when grandma didn't get what she wanted from them? I'm going with not the a-hole, but next time, think a little more before getting involved with your ex's family. You didn't find it weird that after 7 years she just contacted you out of the blue to see your kid? You didn't think about asking your ex what was up with his mother contacting you to see your child? If you two have such a great co-parenting relationship, that's the first thing you should have done. I started a new relationship soon. After my separation with my ex-wife, now happily divorced, I had 2 children aged 5 and 4 when I started new relationship, and my girlfriend had 2 children from her previous relationship aged 4 and 3. It was great. We spent time together, all kids, all 6 of us would go on holidays and spend weekends together, etc. I soon moved into her house in South London. In a few years my ex stole the children and left with someone else to another country where they still are, so I left living in the UK, working in London, and living together with my new girlfriend and her 2 children. I started going to see my children every 2 weeks to spend time with them, and at the same time making sure that my children are taken care of financially and physically and emotionally. Now my children are 17 and 16, and my girlfriend's kids are 16 and 15. Over the last 7 years or so my salary got to the point where I was able to save money for each child in a savings account for them, so that when they all turn 18, I can give them about £8,500 that was saved for them over the last 5 years. Though my girlfriend's children have been treating me extremely horrible, hormones, their own father being a stress at school. Who knows, my girlfriend gave up on trying to tell them not to treat me this way time ago. So, my relationship with her children is quite cold at the moment and has been like that for about 5 years. While this is all happening, my contribution to the household is about 6 times more than my girlfriend, and it seems that I'm the only one who is paying for stuff, house repairs, holidays, bills, etc. So all financial pressure is on me all this while supporting everyone financially and spending money on traveling to see my kids every 3 weeks now to spend time with them. Throughout my life with my girlfriend I always participated in my stepkids' school activities, theater plays, sports, travels, homework, etc., and always looking for a way to create a better relationship with them. I've tried many times to solve this problem, but I don't see this happening without my girlfriend's help, and she is not interested in that. While this is happening I continue to save about 100 billion per month per child. So there is a sizable sum there now for each one of them. A few weeks ago I told my girlfriend that I'm not going to give her children anything that I saved for them, which started a huge row with her, saying that I only look after my kids and that I never cared for hers to begin with. Many horrible things being said from both sides, and I'm not going to pretend that I kept cool, but I stood my ground and told her that I didn't appreciate their behavior, words, and actions warranted me treating them like they deserved it. I think that if my kids were treating me like they treat me I wouldn't give them anything either, but she doesn't believe me. Am I really that horrible to cut them off for being horrible to me for years? Not the a-hole for me. You're good for saving for your kids as for your girlfriend's kids. Shouldn't their bio dad do that for them regardless of how good or bad relationship with them is? You're not obligated to do that for them. Well, yeah, but my original purpose for the savings was to make sure that I treat my stepkids as I do mine. If I was giving my kids one each, I wanted to make sure that I give £1 to my stepkids as well. If we go on holidays, I didn't want to go with my kids to a 4-star hotel but to a hostel with my stepkids. Their father is a deadbeat a-hole who did not contribute even £1 to their mom through their life. So there is a possibility that the reason why they treat me this way is that they are angry with their dad but confused about treating me as their dad. Which I don't really want the a-hole, honestly. I just cut your losses. You aren't married and have no obligation to hurt children. Tell me this, if you and she broke up, would those kids still reach out and talk to you, or would they just cut all communication and never speak to you again? I don't see why you put yourself in this position, but if I were you, I'd just be done with it, not the a-hole. Listen, cut your ties with all of them, and chalk it up to experience. Your girlfriend is using you for financial support and her kids will never see you as a part of them. Find a good partner that has no children, or at least children that are either grown or respectful.